Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is episode 13 of AWS tutorials. Today we'll see how to do API Gateway request and response mapping using API Gateway and Lambda. So this is going to be our flow diagram today. Client will send a request to API Gateway. API Gateway will do the request mapping and then it will send the request to Lambda. Then Lambda will process the request and it will send the response to API Gateway. Then API Gateway will do the response mapping and then it will return the results to client. So guys, in the previous videos, we always enabled Lambda proxy integration. So whenever client calls API gateway, whatever client sends directly goes to Lambda as it is. But in real project, backend never trusts or depend on the client format. That's where API gateway mapping comes in. For an example, think of an API gateway as a receptionist. Clients talks in their own language, but backend understands a different language. So API gateway translates between them. And request and response mapping allows API gateway to control what goes in and what comes out. So let's see how to implement this thing with a clear difference without Lambda proxy integration and with Lambda proxy integration. So let's see how to do that. We are in AWS console. You just make sure you are in the correct region. Now let's create two different Lambdas. Let's create a function. We'll provide the function name dev by Shashank with proxy integration Lambda. In the runtime, we'll select Python 3.14 and let's create the function. So guys, our Lambda has been created. Let's go to the code section. So here we'll just lock the event object. And in the return statement, instead of hello from Lambda, let's write request received successfully. And let's deploy this code. Now let's create one more function. We'll provide the function name dev by Shashank without proxy int Lambda Python 3.14 and let's create the function. So our Lambda has been created. Let's go to the code section. Here we'll print the event object. And here, as we are not going to enable proxy integration, so in that case, we do not need body here. So here we can write any other key. Let's write a message. And here we'll write a request received successfully. And let's deploy the code. So now both the Lambdas have been created. Now we'll create API. Let's create an API. We'll create REST API. And let's provide the API name. Dev by Shashank proxy integration API. This is going to be a regional API. And in the security policy, let's select TLS 1.3 recommended. And let's create the API. So now our API has been created. Now we'll create two resources. So now we'll create two resources, one for proxy integration and another for without proxy integration Lambda. So let's create first resource. I provide the resource name as with proxy. We'll create the resource. And now let's create one more resource for without proxy integration. Here you just make sure you are in the root path. And let's create the resource. So now our both the resources have been created. Now we'll create post methods in both these resources. So first let's create it in with proxy integration. Here we'll click on this create method. We'll select post method. Here we'll select Lambda function. And here this is a with proxy integration. So we'll enable Lambda proxy integration. This is what we are doing till now. Okay. And here in this Lambda function, we'll select with proxy integration Lambda. And we can leave all the configuration as it is. And let's create the method. So now this post API has been created. Now let's deploy this API and we'll test it from Postman. So right now this button is disabled. We'll click on this reload page. Now deploy the API. We'll create a new stage. We'll name it as dev and deploy it. Now here, copy this invoke URL. And now let's go to Postman. Create a new request. Here the method is post. And in the URL, let's paste that invoke URL. And now let's pass some information from parameter and body section. In key, I'll write department. and let's pass ID here. And let's pass one more parameters as source. Here we'll pass web. Now let's pass a JSON object in the body. Here we'll pass a JSON object. Let's send employee data. So here we'll write employee ID. Let's say 101. F name is John. L name is Miller. Age is 25. Experience is 4 years. So now let's click on the send button. If you see, this is working fine. We have received 200 status code and the response is request received successfully. So guys, now let's see what Lambda has received in the input section. We'll go to this first Lambda with proxy integration Lambda, and let's open the CloudWatch logs. This is the CloudWatch log group of the first Lambda. Let's scroll down. There is this log stream. Let's open it. And this is the event that we have received from the API Gateway. So let's copy it and paste it in JSON viewer. Let's click on this format button. So here if you see, we are getting too many information here. And the JSON object is also very complex. Here we are getting resource name, path, HTTP methods, and here this is the header section, then multi-value headers. And here if you see, this is the query string parameters that we passed from Postman, department is IT, source is web. So if we see, body is here that we pass from Postman. So this is a very complex structure. And here we are getting the same key that client is passing as it is. So here from Postman we passed emp underscore id, fname, lname, age, exp. So we got here as it is. Now let's see the response as well. So we go into this code section. Here in the response we return status code as 200, and in the body we return this string request received successfully. And in this Postman we have received response in this way. Okay, now let's see how request and response mapping template works. So we'll go to the second API. We will go into this API gateway. Here we'll go into this resources. Now we have this resource without proxy integration. We'll create a method here. Let's create a post method. Here we'll select Lambda function, and this time we are not going to enable this Lambda proxy integration because we want to modify the request and response structure. And in the Lambda, let's select the second Lambda that we created without proxy integration Lambda, and just leave all the configuration as it is and create the method. So the post method has been created. Now let's scroll down, and here if you see, there is this integration request section. Let's click on it and let's click on this edit button. So as we have selected Lambda function, we have disabled this proxy integration, and this is the Lambda function that we have selected. And here if you scroll down, there is this mapping template. So here we have to create a request mapping template. Okay, so let's click on this add mapping template, and in content type we'll put application JSON, and inside this template body we need to pass a JSON object. So let's create a JSON object first. Here we need to define the request format. So here let's write employee ID, and this employee ID will receive from input JSON. Here we'll write $.employee ID. This means we'll get this employee ID from the JSON object that will pass from body, and there it will read this employee ID key. Now let's put first name. This one also we need to read from JSON object. Now similarly with the last name as well. Now we need to read age. Now experience, years. This one will read from exp. So now the values for these 5 keys we are reading from body JSON object. Now we'll put 2 more keys here that will pass in query string parameters. So let's write department, and this one we need to read from input.params because we are going to pass department and query string parameter section. And we need source as well. And let's change the key for source. Let's write request source. And now let's create one more key where we pass a hard-coded value. I'll write processed by API Gateway. So now our request template is ready. So now let's copy it and paste it in API Gateway. And now let's save it. So now request template has been created. Now let's create a response template also. So for that, let's go into this integration response section. And here let's click on this edit button. So here if we scroll down, there is this mapping templates. Here the content type is application JSON only. And for the template body, let's create a JSON object. Here let's write status code. And let's write message. So now let's check the response object first that we are sending from second Lambda. So here we are returning status code and we are returning message key. So here we need to read this string from this message key. Okay, so let's see how to do that. Here we'll write $input.path $.message. So here we need to read it from message key. And here let's add one more key. Let's write status. Here let's write success. So now our response template is also ready. Let's copy it and paste it in API Gateway. And now let's save the changes. So now we have set the request and response template. Now let's deploy the API and let's test it from Postman. So we'll go into this without proxy post API and let's copy the invoke URL. And here let's create a duplicate request. Here we'll just change the URL. So here we'll pass the same two parameters, department and source. And in the body, we'll pass the same JSON object here. Okay. So now let's click on the send button. So guys, here we got an error. So let's fix it. We'll go into this JSON object. So here if you see for department and request source fields, we are fetching the values from query string parameters. Okay. So here we need to provide double quotes, only then it will work. And for rest of the things that we are fetching from JSON body, so here in the first name, last name, we are passing double quotes in the JSON object only. And for employee ID, age and experience, we are passing integer object. So there we do not need to put double quotes. Okay, so if you want, let's try putting double quotes here and let's see what it does. So now let's just copy this request template and paste it in API Gateway. We'll go into this resource section. We'll click on this post API without proxy resource. Here we'll go into this integration request. Let's edit it. And here in the mapping template, let's update it. And let's click on this save button. Now deploy the API to reflect the changes. Here we'll select dev and deploy it. So now let's test it again from Postman. And this time if you see in the body, we are passing employee ID, age and experience as an integer and fname and lname are strings. Okay, but for experience we have added double quotes there, so it will going to add double quotes in the request object that it will send to Lambda. Okay, so let's click on the send button. So guys, here if you see, we have received 200 in the status code and the response body is status code 200, message is request received successfully and status is success. So this is what that we have configured in the response template. So I'll just show you. This was our response object. So here we have configured this status code. It is coming as it is. Then we have configured message that we are fetching from message field that Lambda is sending. So here it has returned this message field. And this is the status that we hard coded in the response template. Okay, so this is how response template works. Now let's see what Lambda has received. We'll go into the second Lambda. Let's go to the monitoring section. Let's open CloudWatch logs. So this is the log group for second Lambda. Let's scroll down and open this log stream. This is the event object. Let's copy it and paste it in JSON viewer. So guys, here if you see, this is the event that Lambda is received from API Gateway. And let's open that request template that we passed. So the first is employee ID. Second is first name. So if you see here, this is blank. But here we are reading it from F name. So now let's check what we have passed in Postman body section. So here if it is FNAME, and if I go to Postman, here it is misspelled. Here it is FNMAE. So the key name was not correct. That's why it's showing blank here. And this is the L name, last name, Miller. Now this is the age. And now if you see, this is the experience years. Here this 4 is coming in single quotes because here we have put quotes. So that's why it is converting that number into this string. Here employee ID and age are also integer, but as we have not provided any quotes here, so that's why it has not added any quotes here also. Okay. Now the next field is department. It's reading it from query string parameter department. Same is with this request source. And this is the hard-coded value API gateway. So guys, this is how request template works. So guys, see the difference. In the first case, with Lambda proxy integration, we are getting all the details in a complex JSON object. And in the second method, that is without proxy integration, we are getting a simple JSON object that we have defined in the request template. So guys, this is how proxy integration and request and response mapping template works. So here API gateway is acting as a bridge between client and backend process. Here we can create a mapping for request and response objects. So guys, we use these kinds of things. Either our client or our backend process is legacy. It's very old and where we can't change the field names and all. We can't change the JSON objects. Or we can also use these things if we have multiple types of sources. Let's say our backend process is same for web application and mobile application. So in that case also it works. So guys, this was the very basic session of request and response mapping templates. In future, we'll cover advanced and complex scenarios as well. So thank you guys for watching this video. In the next video, we'll see how AWS Lambda actually runs. We'll also compare sync and async invocations. And guys, if you like the video, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. And if you have any doubt, just drop it in the comment section.